This happened a few months ago, during the spring to be exact. I was in that odd transitional phase of life. I had just graduated, but my real-world responsibilities hadn't kicked in yet. With way too much time on my hands and nothing pressing to fill it, I felt completely unmoored. Finishing college a semester early had felt like a victory when I was buried in deadlines, but once I was free, I realized I had no idea how to spend that freedom. My full-time job wouldn't start until June, and most of my friends were still busy with classes and finals. So, until then, I was basically stuck, floating somewhere between the end of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. It was weirdly unsettling. Honestly, it made me feel useless. I'm the kind of person who needs to feel productive, like I'm moving forward. Sitting around for days with no direction was slowly driving me crazy. That's probably why I didn't hesitate when my mom asked if I could check in on my Uncle Rick's beach house. It sounded simple enough. Drive down to Rehoboth Beach, make sure the place was in good shape, check for leaks or damage, and take care of some basic upkeep, so Rick wouldn't need to hire anyone. Oh, and for context, I'm from Pennsylvania, and Rick's place is in Delaware. So the trip wasn't bad at all, just a little over 2 hours on the road. The house is massive, the kind that comfortably holds my entire extended family every summer. 25 of us packed into one place, playing games and drinking too much. Those two activities are honestly the only distinctive things about our family. This house isn't exactly on the shoreline, but it's not too far from the beach either. It's nestled in a quieter neighborhood lined with tall beach grass and winding roads. Fast forward to some random day of the week that I honestly can't even remember. I think it was like a Thursday or something. I left in the late afternoon, which, in hindsight, was probably a dumb idea. The drive was pretty chill. When I got to the house, everything seemed normal. I made my way inside and ran through Rick's checklist. I checked the faucets, the breakers, and walked the property. Everything looked fine. To be completely frank, it felt strange being there alone. I'd never seen that house without miscellaneous board games, sprawled about, and crowds of family members noisily drinking. The silence was definitely the most eerie thing about it. The place felt abandoned or something. I'm sure all of you have that one place, be it a house or a restaurant or something else, that gets really rowdy when your whole family spends time there together. Now try to picture that place empty and silent. Kind of spooky, right? Anyway, it was getting late, and I hate driving at night more than anything, so I texted my mom to let her know I'd just stay overnight and head back in the morning. She told me that was a good idea and reminded me to thank Uncle Rick for letting me stay there, which I did. I made myself some food, messed around on my phone for a bit, and then started washing up for the night. Usually during family gatherings, I'd get jammed into one of the smaller rooms on the third floor, while other relatives got to claim the nicer, bigger rooms. I'm not complaining about the system at all. I'm just telling you how things tended to go. Since I had the house to myself that night, though, I figured I'd take advantage of it. The master bedroom on the second floor has a private bathroom, a massive walk-in closet, and a ridiculously comfortable bed. The decision wasn't exactly difficult. I knew that's where I'd be sleeping. I climbed in around midnight and quickly drifted off. I don't remember what time it was when I woke up, only that something startled me awake. I was still a little groggy, but I was dead sure. Sound had just come from the closet, like something had fallen in there. Without making any noise, I craned my head to look at the closet. Even that small action sent my heartbeat racing. My mind was awake, but my body refused to move, like some kind of sleep paralysis without the paralysis. I could move, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to find out if there was something in that closet. I squeezed my eyes shut and told myself to go back to sleep, and I almost did. But the literal second I started drifting back into sleep, I heard it. A muffled thump from inside the closet. I squinted my eyes just a smidge and tried convincing myself I'd imagined it. But I knew I hadn't. As if overcome by some invisible force, I laid there in complete paralysis with no control over my body whatsoever. Not like before. This time, it was real. I couldn't move, even if I wanted to. Until that moment, I didn't truly understand what it meant to be frozen in place. I listened in horror as the closet door slowly creaked open. Through barely open eyes, I watched as a dark figure stepped into the room. It just stood there beside the bed, motionlessly watching me. Maybe 20 seconds passed, each second feeling impossibly long. Then silently, it turned and left the room. I stayed completely still, barely breathing. The footsteps moved across the floor, but instead of heading downstairs like I'd expected them to, they actually creaked upstairs to the 3rd floor. My stomach churned. The only staircase led up. There was no exit from there. My mind was screaming at me to do something, but I was too afraid. I couldn't overpower a grown man. I had no idea if he was armed. The only thing I could do was wait. After a few painful moments in my own head, I worked up the courage to snap myself out of the paralysis. Quietly, I reached for my phone and dialed 911. As soon as the dispatcher picked up, I whispered as quietly as I could, telling them someone was in the house. I slipped out of bed, and just as quietly turned the lock on the bedroom door. Then I waited. Minutes dragged painfully by until flashing red and blue lights illuminated the windows. I was actually kind of shocked at how quickly the police arrived. I ran down the stairs, threw open the front door, and nearly collapsed in relief when I saw the police. They didn't hesitate. They stormed inside, moving quickly through the house. I waited outside. It didn't take them long. According to them, the house was empty. I was in disbelief. I had heard the footsteps go up, and there was nowhere to go after that, so he must have still been in the house. There was no other explanation. The police insisted he must have slipped past me, that I was too freaked out to notice. I knew that wasn't true, but what could I say? The guy had vanished. I wasn't comfortable letting the police just leave, though, so I called Rick. Rick wasn't having it. He snapped at the police and told them to check again, and that my life might have depended on it. So they did. They searched again, more thoroughly. This time, Rick told me to follow them and watch what they were doing, and so I did. The officers moved methodically, opening every closet and checking under beds, tapping at the walls like they were expecting something hidden behind them. They pulled back the shower curtain in every bathroom, double-checked the locks on the doors and the windows, and that's when they found it. One of the bedroom windows on the 3rd floor, the room I should have been sleeping in, was unlocked. One of them stood by the door, while the other one went downstairs and stepped onto the back deck. I opted to go outside with the second officer, mostly because the thought of being locked in the house with some stranger sickened me. The officer shined his light around the property, but there was nothing out there. He started scanning the roof, and to my horror, his beam swept across something terrifying. It was him. It turned out to be that stranger who had been inside the house all along. He was just sitting there on the roof, this filthy, bald man in ragged clothes, like he hadn't bathed in years. The sight of him made my skin crawl. Everything that followed felt like a blur. The police coordinated quickly, talking over their radios as they surrounded the house. Not long after, they got him down and into handcuffs. They said he was likely homeless, maybe had been living in the house for several days, possibly even longer. But when they questioned him, how he'd gotten in, how long he'd been hiding, why he chose the closet, he didn't say a single word, just stared blankly. That empty, detached look on his face, like none of it meant anything to him. Soon after, he was loaded into the back of a squad car, and that was the end of it. The whole thing was so surreal, I still struggle to process it. No matter how much I think about it, I can't understand why he chose that closet of all places to hide. Maybe he heard me come in and ducked into the first place he could find. But how he even got into the house in the first place, still a mystery. Rick has no idea either. There's no accessible way to get onto the roof from the ground, so that explanation just doesn't make sense. The rest of the family has been urging Rick to upgrade his home security ever since. But for reasons I can't figure out, he keeps saying no. And the scariest part? The thought that if I had actually slept in the bedroom I was supposed to that night, things could have turned out very differently. But first, did you know that 98% of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed? That means you. And yes, I am speaking specifically to you. Probably aren't. So now would be a great time to leave a like on the video and subscribe. Anyhow, my friend Mike owns a beach house down on the Jersey Shore. Calling it nice wouldn't do it justice. It's absolutely stunning. At least, it feels that way to someone like me who didn't grow up with much. I don't know the full backstory behind the house. It's not my family's after all. But from what I've picked up, it's been passed down through Mike's family for generations. His grandparents had been trying for years to make it their permanent home. But sadly, they both passed away not too long ago. Now there's no one living there full time. These days, the place mostly just sits empty. Mike's extended family is scattered out on the West Coast, and his parents are usually too busy to spend time there. The one silver lining in an otherwise unfortunate situation is that Mike basically has open access to the house whenever he wants. I think his dad had plans to rent it out as a source of extra income. But as far as I can tell, that idea hasn't gone anywhere. It's not exactly an easy task to find someone willing to rent out a beach house during the off-season, so you can't really blame the guy. It was sometime in mid-July when Mike hit me up and asked me if I wanted to come down for the weekend. He didn't have to twist my arm. I had nothing going on, and the thought of kicking back at a beach house, especially one that was nice, was an easy yes. His plan was simple. We'd hang out, maybe hit the beach during the day, then head to the boardwalk at night and just enjoy the shore for what it was. It wasn't some crazy party weekend or anything like that. Just a chill escape from the usual. And honestly, I was looking forward to it. Mike and I live pretty close together, so he was going to pick me up and drive me down with him. That Friday, I packed a duffel, threw it in his trunk, and the two of us made the drive down. The first night was chill. We got in sometime around 6, dropped our stuff off in the upstairs bedrooms, and settled in. The house has that cozy, slightly musty beach house smell, like a mix of salt air and old wood. Not in a bad way, more like history. You could tell it's seen decades of family summers. After grabbing a quick bite from a sub shop nearby, we decided to walk the beach for a bit, just to take in the evening. Mike brought a couple rods with him, so we figured we'd try our luck fishing for a while. It wasn't really about catching anything, though. It was more about being out there. At one point, we stumbled across a pair of girls about our age. They were walking barefoot along the shoreline, and Mike, being Mike, struck up conversation right away. They were local, or at least semi-local, and it turned into one of those low-stakes, slightly flirtatious interactions that happen naturally when you're young and on the beach at night. We got their numbers, and they continued their walk while we continued fishing. There were still a good number of people around since it was peak season, but Mike knew all the quiet pockets. Private beach access, tucked away paths through dunes, little spots between houses where the lights didn't reach. We ended up finding a nice stretch to ourselves, where the only sound was the water and the wind. It was the kind of night that made you forget about real life for a bit. The next morning, we woke up around 9 and decided to go for a run along the boardwalk. It was already warm out by then, but there was a breeze coming off the ocean that made it bearable. We weren't doing anything crazy, just a couple miles to get the blood flowing. Mike's a pretty active guy, and I've been trying to stay in shape, so it felt good to move after a night of lounging around. The rest of the day kind of slipped by without us noticing. Later that evening, Mike floated the idea of hitting a few bars in Seaside, but we were both wiped. Even though the idea sounded fun in theory, the thought of waiting in line and yelling over music didn't really line up with how our bodies felt after a full day in the sun. We ended up crashing kind of early instead. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to a shrill, piercing beeping. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, but after a second or two of lying there in the dark, I realized it was real. It sounded like a smoke detector, one of those sharp, high-pitched alarms that cut straight through your skull. I threw myself out of bed and started scanning my surroundings in an effort to pinpoint where the beeping was coming from. It didn't sound like it was coming from my bedroom or anywhere else on the second floor. After focusing for a few more seconds, I got the impression that it was actually coming from above me. Without thinking, I yanked the bedroom door open and made a beeline for Mike's room. With both hands, I jolted him awake and told him to follow me. He immediately caught on to the situation and hurried after me, not even bothering to put a shirt on. As if our lives depended on it, the two of us bolted up the stairs, completely unsure of what we'd be running into. The third floor was mostly dark, except for a little bit of moonlight leaking in through the window at the end of the hallway. We flipped the lights on and started scanning the space, still expecting to see or smell something burning. But there was nothing. No smoke, no flickering lights, no signs of a fire at all. Actually, it was baffling. Eventually, after some painfully irritating minutes of searching for the source of that god-awful noise, I found something. In one of the bedrooms, tucked neatly under a pillow, was a small black device. Before calling Mike into the room, I decided to examine it myself a little, mostly out of pure confusion. It was the size of a walkie-talkie, all black, with the exception of a blinking red light on top. That was it. No buttons, no stickers, no screen. Just a smooth jet black casing, that blinking light, and a single switch on the side. Or at least, what looked like a switch. I flipped it off and the beeping stopped immediately. Mike entered the room at the same time. His eyes flicked from the bed to me to the device in my hand. Neither of us said anything at first. We locked eyes, and I can tell he was just as confused and just as scared as I was. After a few more seconds of silence, he asked me if I had ever seen that black thing before. I said no, and asked him the same, to which he also said no. For the next hour, we tried figuring out what that thing was, how it had gotten there, and what had triggered it, but no answer we came up with was satisfying. Mike swore none of his family members had been in that house in ages, and I believed him. I mean, why would he lie about that? Plus, who the hell would put that thing in their own home? You might think it was for safety or something, or maybe a substitute for a faulty upstairs smoke detector. But again, there was no fire, so it hadn't even prevented any emergencies. And then the matter of how it had gotten triggered in the first place. That was the scariest part about the whole thing. We were sitting in Mike's room in the dark when I had a crazy thought. I couldn't believe it hadn't occurred to me until then. The switch. I pulled out the device and very quickly flipped the switch on and off. And you guessed it. The shrill beeping started up again and stopped as soon as I flipped it off. Both of us froze, and Mike whispered, "Oh my God." The thought hit us both at the same time. The only way to operate the device was by hand. Someone else was in the house. We didn't waste any time. Mike dialed the police while I locked the door, barricading it as best I could. We waited for what felt like forever, and finally, the police showed up. We quickly made our way downstairs to intercept them. After giving them a very brief description of what was going on, they did a full sweep of the house while we waited outside by the front door, per their instruction. When they finally came back downstairs, what they told us was horrifying. Apparently, every single window on the third floor was wide open, even the bathroom windows. And it wasn't just that. The beds were overturned, drawers yanked out, and belongings scattered all over the floor. The room where I'd first discovered the device looked like it had been completely torn apart, despite being spotless just hours earlier. When we searched upstairs, both Mike and I felt like we were losing our grip on reality. But once the officers escorted us back up there, we had to face the truth. It had really happened. The cops didn't find much else. No one hiding, no fingerprints, no weapons, nothing useful. After about 20 more minutes of searching, they advised us to double-check that every window was locked from now on, and told us to call again if anything unusual happened. And just like that, they were gone. Mike and I were both uneasy, deeply shaken by the idea that someone, likely unstable or high on something, had broken in and done all that, with no clear reason. But we didn't have many options. We told ourselves we'd stick it out for the rest of the night and head out first thing in the morning. And that's exactly what we did. Fortunately, whoever had been there must have taken off, because the rest of the night passed without incident. Still, parts of that night remain a complete mystery to me, and I can only imagine what Mike's going through, because truthfully, for all we know, the person who was in that house may have never left. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more amazing video. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. All right, that's it for today. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.